This is a tutorial on Excel. This specific tutorial will discuss the very basics of Excel. You open up an Excel document, which I already have opened, and this is a document that's used often, the budget, and we're specifically on the MSG&A page. Excel has some very basic areas that you function in. These rectangles are called cells. These are called columns. These are called rows. These down here are called tabs. You can have 80,000 tabs, and you can click on the tab and it'll go to that specific tab. The basic interface that you can have in Excel is the cell. That's one of these. And in here you can type. You can do text, you can do numbers, or you can do formulas. This area up here is called the Quick Access Toolbar, but I have the basic functions of save, print, spell check, redo, and undo. I'll undo. Another very usable shortcut is the shortcut to undo on the keyboard. If you want to undo something, you can click on Control, CTRL, and Z. And you can see that it undid that last thing that I just did. And you can continue on further and keep on doing that as you need to. Another one is the redo, which is Control Y. You can see that it's redoing all the different stuff that I've done. Some basic cross-program functions are also cut, copy, right-click, you can click paste, also right-click, insert, delete. These are some basic commands used in most programs. This area up here you will probably not use, this clipboard area, except for cut, paste, and format painter. There are some basic functions that you can click on to accomplish, which you also might be able to do with right-click. You have the format painter here, you have cut and copy. I very seldom use this area. I almost always use right-click. Another important function is insert. If you right-click here, you can see that I can insert a column here. I'll undo that. You can also insert by right-clicking and insert, and it'll give you the options of if you want to insert a cell. Shift cells right, and you can see that one cell will move to the right. I'm going to undo that. As well as insert an entire column. That'll do the whole column. I'll undo that as well. You need to be careful when you're inserting specific cells because you very easily lose track of where that cell is on the page. So if you shift cells down, you now are not in the same row. You've lost, and everything is shifted down. This can cause some problems if you're not careful. I'll undo that. The way to activate a cell is by double-clicking on it. If you're actually double-click on a cell, you're functioning just inside that cell. If you click on it once, you've just selected the cell, and you're not working on inside of it. It's very important. That'll come into play as you function inside of Excel. When you're in the cell, and you can see I just made a mistake. I can click OK. If you're double-clicked on the cell, the undo function only works inside of that cell. As you can see there, redo, undo. In order to get it out of the cell, the best way to do it is by clicking Enter. Always click Enter when you're doing a formula, because if you're working on a formula and you go to click off of it, it'll start selecting cells instead of actually clicking off of it. And therein lies a problem as well. I'll click Undo so you can see that it's done something to the formula. You do it again, it'll undo the last thing that you did. But if you're inside a cell and you've done some work, if you're actually selecting on the cell, you can see that if you click off of it and back on, you can't undo that problem. But if you're off of it, you can undo it. It's very temperamental. A few other items of note inside of Excel. In order to change the width of a column or a row, you come up and you can see this line with a couple arrows. On a couple areas you click and you can drag. And you can see that that will change. You can also do a whole bunch of rows or columns by just dragging, and wherever you do one, it'll do all of them. Another nice feature is you can double click and it will take it to the width of the widest word. So for instance, if I delete this just for kicks, and you watch, it'll change to the width of about this here by double clicking. And when I had them all selected, let's go back to this, add it all width, double click on it, and it'll take it down to that width. And that can work for rows as well. You double click, it'll narrow it out. You can double click here, and narrow that out as well. And as far as height of the rows, or you just double click, and it'll take it to the height that it should be. Now sometimes if you double click, you can start to see that it's going to be a little too narrow. Double clicks works for some features, and that's good, but sometimes it's just as well to make it the width that you want. And you can see it shows the height in pixels. Another feature down here is you can zoom in, and this is not changing the size of the font, it's just changing the size of the screen, so that if you want to see more or less, you can zoom in, and that helps you. There's times when the document is just too wide for the screen. If you make it smaller a little bit, it'll adjust it. Another thing that I like to use is this area right here. You can see that there is showing the average, the count, and the sum. So if I want to do a total of all these sums, instead of having to do a formula, I can actually come down here and see the sum of those is 148,402. Or, for instance, if I want to do a total of these, that's 99,000. Another nice thing is that it will also tell you what cells have a number in them. So, for instance, this is showing a count of 6, and it's also showing an average of 280. Now, if you did this, you'll see that the average is 561. It wasn't including all those zeros. If you did this, you can see that the sum is 524,000. Count of cells that have numbers in them is 78, and the average is 6,726. Just a useful tool. Another important thing that I've used and haven't really shown is the fact that you can take a cell and drag. So for instance, if you're in the middle of needing to populate an entire column with dates, you can do, for instance, January 1, enter, and then click on that cell, take this little square right here and drag it. And you can see it's populating consecutive dates. That square is actually pretty useful in that it can also be used for formulas. So if I wanted to use this information and come up with a formula that says equals sum of these, I will click enter, and you can see that it's actually totaling 59,914, adding these two. Now what I can do, instead of doing that for each one of these cells, I can take this, drag this square down through here, and it's actually going to do the totals of each one of these rows in the row that it's in. Very useful tool. And that's the end of this basic tutorial for Excel. There will be more details in following Excel tutorials.